Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and we're here today to take a look at what I am going to call probably the early top 50 for the 2025 NFL Draft. And I say that because even though we are like 11 months into scouting for this draft, we still got a month to go. There's going to be plenty of changes, I'm sure. We're going to try to rewatch some of these prospects, especially the top ones. I want to make sure I at least get through them one more time. But since the Combine, I have at least went back through and re-ranked most of these players. You can see right now where we have most of them right now on the master view. So this is color code to explain, where are they valued to me, right? So you have the blue players. These are going to be your blue chip guys. You're going to have your light green. That's first round. Then it goes to second, third, and then you have your day 3 players. So we're going to go through this. We're going to especially focus on the top of this draft because that is where the Jaguars are selecting, and it is really important for this team to nail that pick. And like I said on our mock draft, which I believe was the most recent video, we need to bring in top-tier talent to this team. And I know that's a simple thing to say, but we need to get superstar types of players. And that's why you hear me advocate for someone like Travis Hunter, who is the top prospect for me in this class. Because at the end of the day, look, if you give up, say, a second-round pick to move up for him, yeah, it sucks not to have that second-round pick. But if you get the type of player you believe you're going to get, whether it's, getting Travis Hunter, or even if you trade up for Abdul Carter, if that may be an option, which I highly doubt the team would ever do, if I'm being honest, and I don't think they'll trade up in general. But if you did that, and you get the player that you believe you're getting, and that is a Hall of Fame type of prospect, eventually you think they're going to have that type of career for you, it's worth it. You don't care that you gave up a second-round pick to go do it. So that's what's really important there. And the two players that I do have the most conviction with and that have been at the top of this big board for a very long time now are Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. They are the top two blue chip players because I think not only are they, other than maybe Ashton Genty, the best at what they do in this class, but they're also both very important positions. And for Travis Hunter, he plays two of them at an incredibly high level. And I think the upside there for what he'll be is incredible. And I think he's already a great football player. So that is how you get the top two on here, which is probably the same as most big boards. But I am happy to at least say it's been like this for a while for me. Abdul Carter, for example, he has never dropped below third overall on any of my big boards the whole year because he's just a great player. Now getting to the other guys, because we do have 3 more, I would say, blue chip prospects in this class. Those guys to me are Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, and Jahdae Barron. And so what is somewhat important here is considering positional value, right? So you may not take Jahdae Barron 5th overall in the draft and say he's the 5th best player in the draft because there is some talk of positional value, right? Because I do have him listed as a nickel corner. I think if he plays nickel corner, he is going to be one of the very best in the NFL. And if he is, that's a blue chip talent. Now, Tyler Warren and Ashton Genty also have the positional value question a little bit, but I do think that running back is a position that is going to be valued more by NFL teams as we go forward. And Genty, just the way he plays, I think he's going to change whatever team he goes to. I think the only team he could go to where he wouldn't have much of an impact is the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's because they have Saquon Barkley, and they're not getting him in. So he is my third guy, and he is someone that if Jacksonville sits still at number 5, if the 2 quarterbacks go, and then it's Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, I would sit there and say, hey, let's take Ashton Genty at this pick because he is the best player on the board. And I love something that Daniel Jeremiah said this last week, which was essentially you don't pass on a great player for a good player. And I know positional value has somewhat of a role in these decisions, right? It's always got to have something of a role. But at the same time, I think how much better Ashton Genty is at doing what he does compared to the rest of this class it overcomes the positional value to me. And I think if you bring in Genty, you have an incredible run game and you change how this offense functions. And I think that can win you multiple games this year. Because imagine this Jaguars team that we've seen the last couple of years that, hey, I mean, they went 9-8, 2 of those years. They did that without having a dominant run game. And I know Travis Etienne had better seasons in 2024. A lot of his work as well is as a receiver. And this run game has just never been top tier in the NFL. So I think to bring that here would be incredible. But you also have Tyler Warren and Jahdae Barron. Now, Warren and Barron probably not as much of needs for this team, so we're not going to be mocking them a ton to Jacksonville. But Warren, I think he's going to be a hell of a tight end, someone who's going to do a lot more than just play tight end as well. He can really do anything you want. The guy's even taking snaps at center in college football. And I'm not saying he does that in the NFL, but you can get very creative with him. And if you bring in a player like Tyler Warren, which there are scenarios where he could be the best guy on the board for you at 5, you're bringing in someone who is just going to be an elite offensive weapon for this team. He's going to help your run game as a blocker. He's going to be a reliable receiver and someone that you keep around for a long time. So high grade on him. And Jahdae Barron, you hear a lot of the Brian Branch talk with him. He is a little bit different of a player just because he has the speed, right? He also is not necessarily as big as Brian Branch was, but this is someone who, just like Branch, processes the game at such an elite level, has an elite understanding of what he's doing. He's going to be someone who's going to contribute in really any way you could ask. Ignore the ring notification there. Got that turned off now. Now, after this is where you get into a lot of the chalk top players in this class, and you still have really high grades on some of these guys. Will Johnson, he is one that will be reevaluated for me because, look, I mean, if there's not the speed questions, he is up here. He is a borderline blue chip prospect, and he has been for me all year. And I think it's possible that teams are overthinking this with him. But you also have the question of, is there an actual issue with the top speed? And the guy didn't run the 40. So that is really concerning to me. Maybe he's planning to. I don't know. But I would want that question answered if I'm going to take him super high. And so he went from 3 to 6 for me in this last update that I did. Teteroa McMillan, there's some questions about his speed, but you are ultimately getting a very safe player. He's got an incredible frame to work with, hell of a catcher. Could really be the next Mike Evans in the NFL if there is a next Mike Evans, but it's a fair comp to use for him. He's a top player, not much to overthink there, and I think the talk about him falling deep into the first is a little bit crazy, if I'm going to be honest. Now, after this, you get to Mason Graham. The chalk pick for the Jaguars at 5. You see it everywhere, and I'll say this about Graham. I've said this before. I think he is a very good football player. I think that he is a good first-round pick, and it's hard for me to imagine them missing on that type of player, just because I think he's going to be good in the NFL. The question at the end of the day is if this guy is going to be a top 5 draft pick out of this class when we look back at it, and I have questions about that. I don't know if Graham is going to be that type of player because really, when I watch him play, if I'm being honest, I think of Braden Fisk, and that's not an insult at all. Braden Fisk just had an incredible rookie season. It's also some people who think it's a little bit, I don't know what to call it, luck. I know Marcus Whitman, for example, that franchise guy, he's someone who kind of gave him the Trayvon Walker treatment with the sacks really haven't been as good as we thought. I don't have much of an opinion there because I have not watched Braden Fisk's film. But he is someone I comp Mason Graham to because you don't have this like incredible build for the guy, but he is just a what's the way I put it here? I think I have the actual line here. Maybe not. He's just a ball of energy when he plays. That's what I'll say. He's just constant chaos, but it's all planned. He's got an arsenal to him in the way he plays, but he is not someone who's going to have overwhelming size or overwhelming attributes in that regard. He is just a very smart football player. And so that is something that's going to make him a first-round pick, but it is going to make you feel like, hey, are we taking the best player at the end of the day? because I think there might be a ceiling. And I could be wrong. I think he's going to be good in the NFL. I have no question about that. It's just a question of how high do you go with that. And sometimes you get burned on it, right? Aiden Hutchinson, for example, was kind of one of those guys. And he's a hell of a pass rusher. So maybe the same happens with Mason Graham, but still, he has a really high grade for me, just not a top 5 grade. Now you get into like Cam Ward here and some of these other players. I have all the tackles bunched up here. I am a Josh Simmons believer. I have been since day one. He was the first my guy I had in this class. I think what he put on film in 2023 was already that of a first round pick. I know not really many people agree with that, but that's where I was. Or sorry, that's where that's where I was at the start of the process. And he played great the first 5 games, got hurt against Oregon, and unfortunately that ended his season. It looks like he is already recovering really quick, though. There's some film already of him like practicing on the field. He's supposed to have his own pro day coming up. And so that's really exciting for him. I hope he goes high. He is an interesting prospect, though, because, well, I'm really excited about everything he offers. I think the Christian Darrisaw comp is great for him. There is still the question of the injury, of course, that is going to probably make him drop. And at the same time, now all of a sudden, there's questions about his character. And I don't know. Like, I never have met the guy. I have not got the vibe from him watching any of his interviews, which I watched quite a few over the year, that he is someone who's a problem. I think he's a professional in the way he approaches things, at least with the media. He has been that way. He is a smart guy. I just don't see the lack of attention to detail that's been hinted at, but you've heard it from multiple people now. And in one of the chats I'm in on Twitter, where there's a lot of scouts in there, some of them have been saying some of their sources are telling them the exact same things that are lining up with what they've been told, and they've heard this before the most recent news came out. So I don't know. I am not going to let that stop me with Josh Simmons. If the Jaguars, for some reason, decided to take him, I would not be mad at that pick. I just think, obviously, you have the question of, are they going to take an offensive lineman, because you're kind of locked into who you have for at least this year. And then next year, you would have to be cutting contracts. And you can only do that, I think, with Ezra Cleveland and then Robert Hainsey, maybe. I don't know what his guarantees are, but I don't think he has a ton on there. So are you going to take offensive line? I would still do it if it's top of the board, but I would not be against it with Josh Simmons. You also got Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks Jr. here, who are 2 players that have been unanimously top of the tackle position for most of the process. Campbell, he's really close on the arm length. That's the big question with him. I still think he's going to be a great offensive lineman, but if he's moving inside to guard, then you're going to have to drop a little bit on the board, because there's something to the positional value, and there's also something to the fact that you have not played guard. I think sometimes people overlook that a little bit too much. Kelvin Banks Jr., I do think is going to stick at tackle. I think he's a good prospect. I originally had concerns just because it felt like he was a constant waist bender on film. That did improve over this year, though, and I think that he's going to be a solid tackle for a team, and he's a good tackle. Take him in the first round. So I have a high grade on him still. And I will note, starting with Will Campbell here, these are when I get to the mid first round grade. So A+ is early first round, A is mid, and then A- is going to be late first round. What you're going to see here as we go through this top 50, which we will speed up because we got a lot to talk about, but you are going to see that you're not going to get to 32 before you're into the second round prospects here. This is a weak draft class. You may have some exciting players at the top, but it falls off really quick. That's why you hear a lot of the talk right now about maybe we take Ashton Genty, right? Maybe Tyler Warren. I don't think you'll have to do that. I don't think he'll be the best player on the board, but there's more talk about that because you just want to get a great player. There's not a lot of them in this class. So that's a little bit what you're going to see. Now, getting to the next one, Emeka Egbuka, I just think is a very safe pick. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver. And, is he going to be a wide receiver 1? I don't know. Probably borderline, but he is a player who's probably going to be a 1,000-yard guy each season and is going to have a really valuable role with an offense. He's also got really good speed. Didn't hit the 4.3 speed he used to have, but Still, quick player, and he's a hell of a blocker. So he's going to help your run game out quite a bit and be very unselfish in how he serves the offense. Colston Loveland, still a good tight end prospect, right? You don't want to forget that with him. He is not as much of the blocker as what you would like, but still, as a receiving tight end, very good. I would have him above where like Dalton Kincaid was a couple of years ago. So I think he's worthy of going somewhere in this range, probably to the Colts if I had to guess, but he's a good tight end prospect. I don't know if he's really what Jacksonville would be looking for, but still, he's going to be a good pro. Now, I've got a couple pass rushers here. Mike Green and Jalen Walker are those two. Really, the only thing separating this is the height and a little bit of the length, because Mike Green does have him beat out a little bit. I think he's a really advanced pass rusher still. Jalen Walker does have an advantage as far as, I would say, the character here, the leadership ability of him. He's going to be someone who's going to have a huge role there. And with Mike Green, I don't factor this into the evaluation, but Mike Green does have off-the-field questions that have been brought up that are very serious, and we don't really know the answer. So I'm not going to tell you it happened or that didn't happen. That's unfair. But there are those questions there, and it can kind of scare you because it is taking a risk. And that's really unfortunate, right? If he didn't do anything wrong and he falls because of it, that sucks, right? But you also have to try to avoid those big risks. And if it is, then it is. And as far as what he did, you can look it up and figure that out yourself. But I'll say what he's accused of doing because we don't know if he did or not. Tyler Booker and Kenneth Grant are here at 17 and 18. And this is really where you start to get into the late first round. Also have that for starting with Colston Loveland up here, although maybe he gets an A from me when I finish this all up. Tyler Booker is still a really good prospect. There's just the question of what he's going to be able to do in a zone scheme, and I don't think he's going to be that great there, perhaps compared to what he's going to do as a gap blocker. Because this guy, he's going to kick your ass in a phone booth, but if he gets outside of that, there's a question of what he's going to be able to do. I still have more faith in him than most people do. I would still be comfortable taking him to this team, but he is probably going to fall because of that, and maybe he's that guy you're looking to trade up with the Vikings for at number 24. You could definitely see that. Kenneth Grant is another really exciting player. There are some questions about his development, I would say, or maybe playing a little too upright at times, but he is just a very good nose tackle, and that position is not that valuable in the NFL, but still I think he can be more than that while playing it and give you an advantage on defense. So he deserves a high grade, and he does get a first-round grade from me. You got a couple more prospects here, right? Luther Burden III, Walter Nolan, a lot of guys with a lot of potential. I think Luther Burden is going to be a good NFL receiver, but he is going to be a slot guy, and he is coming off a year where he didn't really impress as much as you'd like, and he's got the questions about, oh gosh, what was it? I think I lost note of what I was going to say there. But he's coming off a down year from Missouri, and that part of that's Missouri's fault, and that's on them, but it's unfortunate because it kind of leaks into how we view him as a prospect. And there's a question as well of, is he going to be someone who's going to have to play in the slot? Can he play outside a little bit more? Is he going to help with the run game enough? There were some questions about that early in this process for me. Still have him there. But ultimately, I do think he's going to be a good NFL receiver, and I do like the comp to Deebo Samuel for him. Now, Walter Nolan was another guy I had effort questions with at times, although with Luther, I'm mentioning that with blocking. I didn't see as much of that when I watched his film back. I think Nolan's got a lot to work with, but he also, to be fair, not the biggest player. So he doesn't have as much of an advantage there as you would think, but this was a highly ranked recruit coming into college, and he is still someone who is going to be a really good player in the NFL, we imagine, and has a lot of tools to work with regardless. So I think you're going to love what he brings as a pass rusher, but he's got to be a first-round pick. I know I pay attention a little bit to like how the NFL grades these prospects on their website. He is the highest graded interior defensive lineman. It's worth noting that that is like quite a bit higher than anyone else at the position. So I could see him going early. And maybe the NFL is a lot higher on him than I am here. Now, last couple of first round guys here. Shedeur Sanders, I do think he's going to be a good starting quarterback. He just needs to have good protection in front of him. And if he gets that, I think he'll be fine for an offense. Shamar Stewart is an ultimate upside, right? He's going to be sort of like the Trayvon Walker pick. Not the exact same type of player, but sort of the same idea here. And someone's going to take a shot on him. He's worth taking in the first round. But there is some risk here because you're not getting some developed player, and you're going to have to be able to bring him into your system and be successful in developing. If you can't do that, it's not a good pick. So you got his teammate though. Kicking off second round guys for me here. Nick Scorton. It's been kind of forgot about, but still a really young player. He's a little bit smaller than we originally thought, 257, but still someone who's, I think, a pretty advanced player and is going to have a good role in the NFL right off the bat. I think he's a somewhat safe pick, and I like where you're going to have to take him now, which is probably early second round, late first round. I think that's a fair range for him, and I'm a fan. Two players that I wish I could rank higher, but you have the questions about injuries, are Benjamin Morrison, Siobhan Revell. Morrison had his hip injury, and that is a big question mark because we don't really know what's up there. And if that's a problem long term, then you don't want to draft that at cornerback. But this guy, keep in mind, at the start of the cycle, I mean, he was a top cornerback. He was up there with Travis Hunter, with Will Johnson, maybe the best man coverage guy in the class. And he was like a top 5, top 10 type of prospect. So he is going to fall. He is probably going to be a value. And it's just that question of, are you comfortable with the injury there? Siobhan Revell, on the other hand, I think it's actually said a little bit different than that, so forgive me. But he is someone that has a ton of tools, right? Great size, 6'2", 194 here. Super fast athlete as well. Ran a 4.40 back in high school. Did not get to see him run, I believe. We'll confirm that here. Yeah, he did not run, but you see the size. I mean, this is like nearly edge rusher size at the cornerback position. But Revell is someone who has a lot of upside. Reminds you a little bit of Tariq Woolen, and could be a really nice pick for a team late in the first round. You're just going to have to figure out what kind of scheme he's going to fit into and if you can develop him. Now, a couple guys that are probably higher on most people's rankings. Jahad Campbell, Armand Membu. Campbell, I still think is a great prospect. I have nothing against it. It's a little bit of the positional value here. And then he is still someone who has to develop, but he has all the tools. I have no problem with the team taking him a little bit earlier. With Membu, he maybe just didn't impress me as much as he did others. I still think he's going to be a good offensive lineman, but I didn't see the film that would convince me that this is a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, which is why I have him down here as more of a early second round pick, which in this draft class, to be fair, this is making it into the late first round because we're still in the mid-20s, and we have second-round grades here. Now, Gray Zabel, I think he's just going to be a really good interior prospect. Could play guard, could play center. But if you put him inside, you make up for the arm length. I think he's going to develop very well there. He's just a very refined blocker and someone you'd want to add to your offensive line if you're just looking for a high floor, still a pretty high ceiling type of player to play there. So I love that pick. I love it for Jacksonville. If they want to take someone like that this year, I'd have no problem with it. Now it gets a little spicy, right? James Pierce Jr., maybe a little bit lower than most people have him. I know there's character things that have come up with him that seem probably the most legit out of the ones that have been brought up. And I think as a run defender, he did improve a bit, but that is a bit of a question mark. And I just think his size is a concern. So if he could bulk up, I think he'd be a much better player, but that is a problem for me, and that does kind of limit where he is in this class for me. Now, Kevin Winston Jr. and Malachi Starks. This is where I started. I'm going to leave it here because I just think Winston's going to be awesome in the NFL. And I understand if Starks is higher for people, he's going to be higher for basically every other person on the planet. But I think Winston's going to be really nice as a strong safety. I think he's a playmaker. He's someone who's going to get you turnovers, someone who is going to be an impact player for your defense. And Starks is going to do a lot of the same. It was interesting because there were some issues with processing skills. You saw on film this year some angles that were taken that were really poor and cost some big plays for Georgia. And then you look at the 40-yard dash. I mean, this is still great speed here, but he was supposed to be a much better athlete than Kevin Winston Jr., and it didn't really turn out that way. So I think you've got a notably bigger player in Winston. And while he may be a strong safety, maybe you value that a little bit less than the free safety. I just think he's got as much to work with, and I just like drafting him a little bit more. So, bit of a hot take there, but Kevin Winston Jr. is a my guy for this year, and is probably for a lot of people, to be fair. But those guys I have very close. Harmon, he could go higher than this. There's just some questions about his tackling and being a more consistent player, but he's got a lot of potential, and he's a really nice defensive tackle pick. So would love to get him if Jacksonville wants to trade up for him if he somehow falls. But I think you're going to have to move up if you want him. Got Jalen Milroe here at 33. Kind of the same old you hear about him. He's got a lot of questions, but he's super high upside. The running ability is insane with him. And I think some teams got to take a shot on him just for those reasons. Jovis Savanaia, he's going to be a good guard. I think he's a pretty safe pick, and he is someone who is not selfish. You saw that clearly at the NFL Combine interview where they asked him where he's going to play, and I mean, he's fine moving at guard. He's not going to fight it, and he feels like that's where he's going to be best and going to be able to help the team the most. So, go have it. I mean, we love it. So I think he's going to be good there. I think it's going to fit him very well playing at guard, and he's got some awesome size to work with as well. Definitely excited for him. I think he's going to be a good guard in the NFL. Omarion Hampton, someone I raised recently. I had him kind of low for a while, but just watching back his film, he's got elite traits in terms of the speed and the size combination that he brings. So that matters a lot. I don't see as much of the shiftiness with his game, but still, he's going to be a playmaker. He's going to be able to stay out there for all three downs. He's a really good blocker as well. Good receiver, too. You have everything you need in him. I just don't think he's obviously to the level of like an Ashton Genty, but he is a running back, too, for me here. Kyle Kennard, Mykel Williams. Kennard I have a lot higher. I think he's a good pass rusher. And I think as a run defender, he's fine. Not as good as you want, but I think you put that type of player. So Kennard, he's someone I have really high, someone I really like, and not afraid of having him here. Mykel Williams, though, if you're going for upside, take him over Kennard. There's just the question of what he's going to be when he's in that full-time role as a defensive end, not playing like inside and doing weird things. He was used very weird at Georgia, and that does kind of hurt his projection. It's kept him sort of developmental when you look at him. Now, two guys I interviewed at the Senior Bowl, Maxwell Hairston, Jalen Royals. I think they're both good prospects. Not the top tier of this class, but Hairston, he's got some great movement skills. He's got a solid frame as well compared to what we originally expected for him. And I think what he did at the Senior Bowl was just showed that he has a lot of upside as well in man coverage. So I think this is someone who can do it all for your team. I know there was something mentioned off the field. I won't say what. It's another thing. I don't want to bury guys before we know, especially for the more important things. If it's character, or you can kind of see some of that. I mean, I understand that. But when it's serious accusations, we don't know a lot of the time. And with Hairston, I would be shocked, but I don't know. I still, as a prospect, I think he's a really good one, just like Jalen Royals, who ran a 4.4. We'll see the actual time here. Get that right. Yeah, 4.42. Despite having an injury on his foot, they asked him at the Senior Bowl if he was going to run, and that was something he mentioned. He wanted to do it, but was a little concerned about the injury he was recovering from. But still, this guy ran super quick. And you see that on film with him, right? He's a very good route runner, got a lot of releases. He has the speed. And at the catch point, he's awesome. And he makes some crazy plays. And to a very light version, he kind of reminds you of Malik Neighbors in some ways, which is exciting. I don't think he's going to be to that level, but I would love to bring this guy in as a slot receiver for an offense. I think that would be a lot of fun. Now, getting to our last guys, going to run through this quick. We've got 40 here, and we'll end at 50. Travion Henderson, going to be an awesome running back if you limit the snap count. Injuries are the big question, but he has elite speed, and he's going to make a lot of plays for an offense if you keep him in, not on a full-time role. And he's a good blocker as well. It's a good receiver. He's going to be able to do everything. Just watch your usage with him. Arante Ursary, still kind of see him the same way. Not the safest tackle prospect, but a super high upside guy. Great movement skills for size. Definitely enticing for a team. Could sneak into the first round. JT Tuimoloau, very much overlooked. I think it's just because he had a lot of hype around him. There was a lot of hope he was going to be an elite player, and never really got there in college. And so that's why you have him maybe not getting talked about by a lot of people. And I finally just saw something about him today because I saw him get on a video where it was players that were just not getting enough hype. And it was from Goat House, and I thought it was a great start to it because you just don't hear the guy's name, and he's still a top prospect. He's going to be a good player. So I would love to get him, depending on the scheme you run. I think he's more of a 4-3 defensive end, so that is going to be important to consider. Alfred Collins, he's just a really good run-stuffing defensive tackle and could be a nose tackle in the NFL. Got some upside as well as a pass rusher. He's a fun pick. I think he's going to be an impact player in the NFL. It's just a question of how good is he? And I think it's going to be pretty good. Quinshon Judkins, not the season you wanted, but still you have so much to work with there. I think he's going to be a good running back, but you do have some questions maybe about the creativity from his game this year, and can he do it all for an offense? I do think he's gotten a lot better as a blocker with Ohio State, so that's exciting. That's kind of where he ends up. Josh Connerly Jr., I know some people have him higher than this. I just never got to that point. I think you have tools to work with, but he is very much someone who's still developing. You could learn that the Senior Bowl, watching him after practices, where he's still like getting coaching from guys after practice is over, and I appreciate that, and I think that's something that says a lot about him and his dedication to his craft. But there's a reason why he's getting coaching on some of the things he is, and so I do think he could be a very good pick, but he is a little bit developmental. Now, Jack Betch, dude, he's awesome. Just an awesome receiver. And the question is probably athleticism at the end of the day, but this guy's going to block his ass off. He's going to kill people in the run game. He is a reliable receiver at the catch point. He will run through people. He's going to be a good route runner. Just so many things he's working with. It's just the lack of elite athleticism, or really great athleticism, or even good athleticism, you could say, depending on how you grade it. That is the big question with him, but he's going to be a good pick. And for Jacksonville, honestly, I think this is one you look at very closely because you don't have a slot guy. I think, Jack could play any role, but I would love to have him as a power slot, put him in there for the run game, have him as a receiver over the middle. I think it's just such a good role for him. I think Jacksonville's a great fit. Now, Wyatt Milam, I still think he's a good player, and I think he's probably going to be a guard given his size. But West Virginia, last year they put out was it Zach Frazier, the center, and man, he's been great in the NFL, and I think this is another one from that school. I'd love to bring him in as a backup guard for this year, let him develop, and see what he does. He's going to be a mauler. He's going to kill people in the run game, and he's still a very good pass protector. It's one of those guys that, yeah, he struggled a little bit at the Senior Bowl. Didn't have the combine you necessarily were hoping for. Not that it was terrible by any means. But he is someone that I just say, hey, watch the tape. Watch the film. It's there with Wyatt Milam. Nick Emanwari, I had him kind of low here. I totally understand if he goes higher. He has every trait you could ask for. He just didn't blow me away on the film. And it is a safety. So there are those questions, but if you're going for upside and you feel like you can develop this player, okay, then he's the first safety off the board. Pretty simple. But I just don't see him to the level of the other two guys. Tyleik Williams, I think he's a good nose tackle. Little bit to offer as a pass rusher, but mainly this is your top nose tackle option that's really a true nose tackle, unless you're going to count Kenneth Grant in that role. The final guy here, you can see who I have just under this that's missing the cut. But Zaire Thomas, I apologize for getting his name wrong in his interview to his face. I kind of felt bad about that. But he also didn't say he wanted to play in Jacksonville when I asked him. Not that he said no, so maybe he deserved it. But he's a younger guy. He's got great size. He is awesome in man coverage. And so if you're that type of team, this is your guy. But how many teams play that? There's a lot of teams that play mostly zone. Jacksonville might be one of those. I kind of hope it is for the sake of players like Tyson Campbell, who you want to see better things out of. But ultimately, when Thomas goes to a team that's more of a zone fit, it's going to be a good pick. It's just a question of who that's going to be. He is just someone who's gotten better and better, developed very well. I remember before this year, he was one of those like deep sleepers or potential early picks if you really turn things on, and he did with Florida State. And he had a good week at the Senior Bowl and has had a pretty good process. So that's why he's there. Just to mention the guys who barely missed, Matthew Golden, I didn't see the athleticism he showed at the Combine on film. I have severe questions about that. And I shouldn't say severe necessarily just because, like, okay, maybe even if he's not a 4.29 guy on the field, maybe he still runs like a 4.3. And that's fine. That's great. I just was not super impressed. I didn't see him as like an alpha receiver. I could be wrong, but ultimately, he just wasn't someone I thought I'd take an early shot on. Omar Norman-Lott, really exciting film, but he has not played more than 300 snaps in a season since 2021. So there's that big question. But if I remember correctly, sometimes guys like that go early, because I'm pretty sure Lucas Van Ness had the same thing, and he went like in the teens of the first round. Donovan Izuraku, he'll be the last one I mentioned here. He is more of a designated pass rusher. I wasn't as impressed with his pass rush profile as most people are. I still think it's good, but it's more of a second round pick to me, especially because that's really the only time I'm going to be putting him on the field. So that's what you got here. We'll take one final look again at the master review so you can see where players fell that maybe weren't mentioned here. But that's kind of how I look at this class. I think there's some blue chip guys at the top, but ultimately for Jacksonville, where I'm at, I think move up for Travis Hunter if the opportunity's there. And I would pay a high price. I would not give up a future first. I'd give up a second. I'd give up our second this year if you had to do it, because you won't regret it when you have that caliber of player on your team for the next decade plus. I do think with, Abdul Carter, if he fell to 5, which I don't think is going to be the case, I think he's going at 2 now. It really feels that way. Abdul Carter, I just think he's going to be awesome. And if he's there at number 5, you take him. And if you trade up for him, that's fine too. But not as big on that as Travis Hunter. If I'm moving up, that's my prize. And at 5, if both those guys are gone, it's Ashton Genty for me if he's on the board. I assume he is. I just think he's going to be a big difference maker. And you bring the guy back home to Jacksonville. That's pretty cool. So that's where I sit on that. I think you've got some options for the second round. I would like to see this team trade up if someone falls. 224, it's the perfect spot. The Vikings need picks. We have their picks. And we move up right in front of Houston. So you move up to 24 and you take Josh Simmons or Tyler Booker or something like that, you could really do some damage there. And it'd be a great player for the long term, because that is the most important part. We're not just taking players to sabotage other teams, but this is an area that we could definitely address long term. So that's what we got here. I do want to say, I apologize. We have not had a video out for a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be kind of a recurring issue up to the draft, but I am moving here in 2 or 3 weeks. And so it's been a lot of time dedicated to that, just trying to get things packed up, get things planned. It's the first time I've had a place completely by myself. So I'm just trying to get that all sorted out. And that's why we haven't had a video out here since I think last Thursday. But we'll be better about it and keep things going. If you guys got things you want to see, definitely let me know. Would love to hear some recommendations. But with that said, want to shout out our channel members: Premier Seer 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Ichi Wiener, Mr. Dolphin, Scrubber Ducky 500, Brian Foster, and Frangies. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.